My name is Sarah Thompson, and last Thanksgiving, my entire family spent the evening mocking me for being the broke one who could barely afford to bring store-bought rolls to dinner. They had no idea that sitting quietly at their table was the woman who had secretly paid off every single one of their mortgages over the past 3 years. What happened when the truth came out changed our family forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I've always been the quiet one in the Thompson family. While my siblings pursued flashy careers and expensive lifestyles, I chose a different path entirely. At 32, I'm the founder and CEO of Meridian Financial Solutions, a debt consolidation and financial consulting firm that has grown far beyond anything I ever imagined when I started it in my studio apartment 7 years ago. The irony isn't lost on me that I built a fortune helping people get out of debt, while my own family assumes I'm drowning in it. My company specializes in restructuring corporate debt and providing financial solutions for businesses on the brink of bankruptcy. We've saved hundreds of companies from closure and helped thousands of families keep their homes. What started as a one-woman operation now employs over 180 people across 4 states, generating annual revenues that would shock my family into silence. But they don't know any of this. To them, I'm still the Sarah who drives a 7-year-old Honda Civic, shops at discount stores, and lives in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Cleveland's middle-class suburbs. They see someone who clips coupons and brings generic soda to family gatherings, never someone who owns a company worth $57 million. My older brother Marcus is everything I'm supposedly not. At 35, he's a pharmaceutical sales representative who never misses an opportunity to mention his 6-figure salary, company car, or latest commission bonus. Marcus drives a leased BMW, wears expensive suits, and has turned every family gathering into a showcase of his material success. His wife Jennifer, a dental hygienist with champagne tastes, encourages this behavior while constantly redecorating their suburban home with the latest trends. My younger sister Diana represents the other extreme of family success. At 29, she married Kevin Rodriguez, a successful contractor who owns 3 hardware stores across Ohio. Diana doesn't work outside the home, spending her days managing their household and posting carefully curated photos of their lifestyle on social media. Their 5-bedroom house in an exclusive gated community serves as the unofficial headquarters for family celebrations, complete with a chef's kitchen and entertainment room that Diana loves showing off. Then there's my youngest brother Tyler, 26, who works as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized advertising agency. Tyler is the family's golden boy, having graduated from Ohio State with honors and landing his dream job immediately after college. He recently bought his first house with his fiancée Rebecca, a teacher, and they're planning an elaborate wedding that's already straining their finances despite their combined incomes. All 3 of my siblings live what most people would consider successful lives. They own homes, drive nice cars, take annual vacations, and maintain the appearance of financial prosperity. What they don't realize is that their comfortable lifestyles have been quietly subsidized by the sister they consider the family failure. 3 years ago, when Marcus was facing foreclosure after Jennifer's overspending led to maxed-out credit cards and missed mortgage payments, I stepped in. Through a shell company I created specifically for family assistance, I purchased his mortgage from the bank and restructured his payments to something manageable. Marcus never knew the identity of the investment firm that saved his house, only that his prayers had been answered by some anonymous benefactor willing to give him a second chance. Diana and Kevin faced their own crisis 2 years later, when Kevin's business expansion went wrong, leaving them with 3 failing stores and a mortgage they couldn't afford on their dream house. The same shell company quietly bought their debt, restructured their payments, and provided the capital Kevin needed to close 2 stores and focus on making the 3rd profitable again. Diana still posts about their blessed life on social media, never knowing that her sister's money allowed them to keep the lifestyle she showcases online. Tyler's situation was different, but equally critical. Fresh out of college with student loans and eager to prove his independence, he'd overextended himself buying a house he couldn't actually afford on his entry-level salary. When the adjustable-rate mortgage reset to a payment that consumed 70% of his income, he was too proud to ask family for help. The same anonymous investment firm acquired his mortgage, locked in a fixed rate he could manage, and even helped him refinance at better terms. The shell company, Thompson Holdings LLC, became my secret weapon for family assistance. Legally structured and professionally managed, it allowed me to help my siblings without their knowledge or pride being damaged. Each transaction was handled through lawyers and intermediaries, ensuring my involvement remained completely hidden while providing legitimate, sustainable solutions to their financial problems. My decision to remain anonymous wasn't just about protecting their pride, though that was certainly part of it. I'd learned early in my business career that family relationships and money create volatile combinations. By the time I had the resources to help, the pattern of our family dynamics was already well established. Marcus had claimed the role of the successful provider, Diana was the princess whose husband spoiled her, Tyler was the rising star with unlimited potential, and I was the struggling sister who never quite measured up. Changing those perceptions would have required conversations I wasn't ready to have, and scrutiny I didn't want to invite. It was easier and more effective to help from the shadows, ensuring my family's financial stability while maintaining the comfortable fiction that I was the one who needed their concern and occasional condescending advice about money management. My parents, Robert and Linda Thompson, both retired teachers living on modest pensions, occupy a unique position in our family's financial ecosystem. They're proud of all their children but worry most about me, frequently expressing concern about my simple lifestyle and suggesting I should ask my more successful siblings for career advice. They have no idea that their own mortgage was quietly paid off last year through the same shell company, ensuring their retirement years would be free from financial stress. The complexity of maintaining this facade extends beyond just hiding my wealth. I've become an expert at deflecting questions about my work, describing Meridian Financial Solutions as a small consulting firm that helps people with basic financial planning. I let people assume I'm a low-level employee, rather than the founder and majority owner. When family members offer unsolicited advice about finding better jobs or suggest I should go back to school for something more lucrative, I nod appreciatively and promise to consider their suggestions. This lifestyle requires constant vigilance. I drive the Honda Civic even though my garage also houses a Tesla Model S and a vintage Porsche. I shop for clothes at discount retailers while maintaining a separate wardrobe of designer pieces for business meetings. My modest apartment serves as my official address while I actually live in a stunning lakefront property 30 minutes outside the city. The apartment is maintained as a cover story, complete with mail forwarding and occasional visits to maintain the illusion. The emotional toll of this deception has grown heavier over the years. Sitting through family dinners while Marcus brags about his latest bonus, knowing I earn more in a month than he does in a year, requires significant self-control. Watching Diana post about her blessed life on social media, knowing that my money made her lifestyle possible, creates a strange mixture of satisfaction and frustration. Listening to Tyler stress about money while planning his expensive wedding, when I could eliminate all his financial worries with a single phone call, feels like torture sometimes. But the alternative seemed worse. Revealing my success would fundamentally alter every relationship in my family. The dynamics that had developed over decades would crumble overnight, replaced by expectations, requests, and the complicated politics that accompany family wealth. I'd seen it happen to other successful people in my business network. Family members who suddenly needed investments in their schemes, siblings who expected endless loans, parents who felt entitled to luxury lifestyles funded by their successful child. My choice to remain hidden also protected my business relationships and personal security. Very few people outside my company know the true extent of my wealth, and I prefer it that way. Clients trust me because they see someone who understands financial struggle, not someone born into privilege. Employees respect me because they believe I built the company through the same hard work they put in every day, not because I had family money to fall back on. The irony of my situation became most apparent during family gatherings, where the contrast between perception and reality reached almost absurd levels. While my siblings discussed their financial achievements and future plans, I sat quietly, occasionally contributing stories about budget meals or thrift store finds that reinforced their assumptions about my circumstances. These performances became second nature, but they also created an emotional distance that grew wider with each passing year. As Thanksgiving 2024 approached, I found myself questioning whether this elaborate deception could continue indefinitely. The psychological burden of maintaining two separate lives was becoming overwhelming. and I wondered if the protection it provided my family relationships was worth the personal cost. Little did I know that the upcoming holiday dinner would force a reckoning I'd been avoiding for years, changing everything I thought I knew about family, success, and the price of keeping secrets. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The origins of my financial empire began in the most unlikely place imaginable, the bankruptcy court of Cuyahoga County. Fresh out of college with a degree in economics and finance, I'd taken a low-paying job as a paralegal at Henderson & Associates, a small law firm that specialized in bankruptcy cases. The work was depressing and the pay barely covered my student loans, but it gave me a front-row seat to something that would change my life forever. Every day, I watched ordinary families lose everything because they didn't understand their options. Business owners who could have saved their companies with proper restructuring instead watched them crumble under impossible debt loads. Homeowners facing foreclosure had no idea that alternatives existed beyond simply walking away from properties they'd worked decades to afford. The system seemed designed to help people fail rather than recover. Mrs. Eleanor Jameson was the case that opened my eyes. A 73-year-old widow whose late husband's medical bills had consumed their savings, she was about to lose the family home where she'd raised 4 children. The mortgage had 2 years left, but she couldn't make the payments on her Social Security income. The bank was proceeding with foreclosure, and she'd resigned herself to moving into a nursing home she couldn't afford either. During my lunch breaks, I started researching her situation. What I discovered was that a simple restructuring of her debt, combined with a reverse mortgage, could allow her to stay in her home for the rest of her life. But nobody had explained these options to her. Not the bank, not her previous attorney, not even the court-appointed counselor. She was being pushed through a system that treated her as a statistic, rather than a person with solvable problems. I spent my own money to hire a financial consultant, and worked nights for 3 weeks, developing a comprehensive solution for Mrs. Jameson's situation. When I presented it to my supervising attorney, he was amazed. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked, studying the detailed restructuring plan I'd created. The truth was, I'd taught myself through online courses, library research, and sheer determination to help someone who reminded me of my own grandmother. Mrs. Jameson kept her house. More importantly, word spread through the legal community about the paralegal who'd saved a case everyone assumed was hopeless. Within 6 months, attorneys from other firms were calling Henderson and Associates, asking if I could consult on their difficult cases. My boss gave me a raise and started billing my time as a financial analyst rather than a paralegal. But the real turning point came when Marcus started having his first serious money problems. This was 8 years ago, long before his recent foreclosure crisis. He'd just married Jennifer, and they'd immediately overextended themselves buying a house they couldn't afford while maintaining the lifestyle they thought successful couples should have. Jennifer's spending habits were already spiraling out of control, but Marcus was too proud to admit they were in trouble. During a tense family dinner where Marcus had bragged about his latest commission while secretly panicking about credit card payments, I realized that my own family could benefit from the skills I'd been developing. But approaching Marcus directly would have been disastrous. He would have seen it as his little sister trying to manage his life, and his pride would never have allowed him to accept help. That's when I had the idea that would eventually become Thompson Holdings LLC. Using the legal knowledge I'd gained at the law firm and the financial restructuring skills I'd been developing, I created a legitimate investment company designed specifically to help people in financial distress. The beauty of the structure was that it allowed me to help family members without them ever knowing the source of their salvation. The company's first case was Marcus's debt consolidation. Through careful research and networking, I identified the companies holding his credit card debt and arranged to purchase it at a discount. Thompson Holdings then offered Marcus a debt consolidation loan at favorable terms, presenting itself as a small investment firm that specialized in helping young professionals manage their finances. Marcus was so relieved to find a solution that he never questioned why this mysterious company was willing to help him when banks had turned him down. The success of that intervention taught me something crucial about family dynamics and money. Marcus's gratitude toward the anonymous company was genuine and lasting, but it came without the complications that would have arose if he'd known his sister was behind it. He didn't feel diminished or indebted to family. He could maintain his self-image as a successful provider while actually becoming one, with the help he didn't know he was receiving. Building Thompson Holdings into a legitimate business required me to leave Henderson and Associates and take an enormous financial risk. I'd saved $38,000 from my paralegal work, living on ramen noodles and sharing a cramped apartment with 3 roommates. This money became the seed capital for what would eventually become Meridian Financial Solutions. The transition from employee to entrepreneur was brutal. For the first 18 months, I worked 100-hour weeks, sleeping on the office couch more often than in my apartment. I learned web design to build the company website, taught myself accounting to manage the books, and studied marketing to attract clients. The business model was simple but revolutionary. Instead of pushing people into bankruptcy, we would find creative ways to restructure their debt and save what they'd built. My first major breakthrough came when I successfully restructured the debt for Riverside Manufacturing, a small company that made automotive parts. They were 3 months behind on supplier payments and facing closure, which would have put 47 people out of work. Traditional lenders wouldn't touch them, and bankruptcy attorneys were pushing them toward liquidation. I spent 2 weeks analyzing their situation and discovered that their problems weren't operational but structural. They had good contracts and solid demand for their products, but their debt service was consuming 90% of their cash flow. By negotiating with creditors, restructuring payment schedules, and helping them secure a line of credit secured by their accounts receivable, I not only saved the company, but positioned them for growth. The Riverside Manufacturing case established my reputation in Ohio's business community. Within 6 months, I was getting referrals from attorneys, accountants, and business consultants who had clients facing similar situations. Each successful restructuring led to more business, and each new client taught me something about the complex relationship between debt, cash flow, and business viability. As my client base grew, I realized that the skills I'd developed for businesses could be applied to personal financial situations as well. Families facing foreclosure often had the same problems as struggling businesses: good fundamentals undermined by poor debt structure. By treating personal financial crises with the same analytical approach I used for corporate clients, I could often find solutions that traditional consumer credit counseling missed entirely. The personal side of the business exploded when I successfully helped the Rodriguez family save their home in Akron. Kevin Rodriguez, who would later become my brother-in-law, had expanded his hardware store business too aggressively, taking on debt that looked manageable during good economic times but became crushing when a recession hit his customer base. Diana had been dating Kevin for 2 years at that point, and the family knew he was struggling, but nobody understood how close he was to losing everything. Through Thompson Holdings, I purchased Kevin's business debt from 3 different lenders, consolidated it into a single loan with manageable payments, and helped him develop a business plan for sustainable growth. The intervention saved his company and, eventually, his relationship with Diana. When they married a year later, Kevin credited his, quote, business turnaround to finding the right financial partners at the right time. By my 5th year in business, Meridian Financial Solutions was handling cases across 4 states. We'd saved 63 businesses from closure, helped over 200 families avoid foreclosure, and generated enough revenue for me to move operations into a proper office building in downtown Cleveland. The irony was that my success remained invisible to my family precisely because I was so good at helping people solve their problems quietly. The decision to maintain secrecy about my growing wealth wasn't entirely altruistic. I'd observed how money changed family relationships in my client base. Successful business owners often complained about relatives who suddenly needed loans for various schemes. Wealthy families frequently struggled with children who felt entitled to inherited wealth rather than motivated to create their own success. By staying hidden, I avoided these complications while still being able to help when genuine crises arose. My personal life became increasingly compartmentalized as the business grew. The modest apartment I maintained as my official address was a carefully constructed stage set, complete with discount furniture and generic groceries in the refrigerator. My real home was a stunning lakefront property in Mentor, Ohio, 40 minutes from downtown Cleveland. The house sat on 3 acres of private shoreline, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Erie and a home office where I could work without worrying about unexpected family visits. The emotional cost of this double life began to accumulate gradually. Family dinners became performances where I had to remember which financial struggles I'd mentioned previously and which successes I needed to downplay. When Marcus bought his BMW, I had to feign admiration while knowing I'd recently purchased a Tesla that I couldn't drive to family events. When Diana posted photos of her dream kitchen renovation, I had to comment enthusiastically while hiding the fact that my own kitchen had been featured in Architectural Digest. The most challenging aspect wasn't the material deception, but the emotional isolation. I couldn't share my professional achievements with the people who should have been proudest of them. When Meridian Financial Solutions was named to Cleveland Business Journal's Companies to Watch list, I celebrated alone. When we saved our 100th business from closure, there was no family dinner to mark the milestone. My success felt hollow without people to share it with, but revealing it would have fundamentally altered every relationship I valued. The complexities deepened when I realized that my family's financial stability was becoming entirely dependent on my hidden interventions. Marcus's lifestyle required the debt restructuring I'd provided. Diana and Kevin's comfortable life was possible only because I'd saved Kevin's business. Tyler's confidence as a young homeowner existed because I'd rescued him from an impossible mortgage. Even my parents' peaceful retirement was secured by my anonymous mortgage payoff. This web of secret assistance created a strange dynamic, where I was simultaneously the most successful and the most worried member of the Thompson family. While my siblings enjoyed the fruits of financial security, I carried the burden of ensuring that security continued. Every business decision I made affected not just my employees and clients, but also my family's hidden dependence on my company's continued success. As Thanksgiving 2024 approached, I found myself questioning whether this elaborate structure could continue indefinitely. My company was preparing to go public, which would make my wealth impossible to hide. Forbes had contacted my office about including me in their Self-Made Women feature. The success I'd worked so hard to achieve was becoming too large to contain within the boundaries I'd established. The invitation to Diana's Thanksgiving dinner arrived with the usual family dynamics already in motion. Marcus had called to mention his latest bonus. Tyler was stressing about wedding expenses while dropping hints about how successful his career was becoming, and Diana was planning a menu that would showcase her domestic perfection. Once again, I would be the sister who brought store-bought rolls and listened to everyone else's achievements while hiding the fact that I could buy and sell all their accomplishments without affecting my checking account balance. What I didn't know was that this particular Thanksgiving would force a confrontation I'd been avoiding for 3 years. The careful balance I'd maintained between helping my family and protecting our relationships was about to collapse in the most unexpected way possible. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered to my modest apartment in an envelope that screamed Diana's attention to detail. The heavy cardstock was embossed with autumn leaves in gold foil, and the calligraphy was obviously professional. The Rodriguez family cordially invites you to celebrate Thanksgiving 2024. Read the formal script, as if this were a wedding rather than a family dinner. Inside, Diana had included a handwritten note on matching stationery. Sarah, I know you're probably worried about contributing to the meal, but don't stress about it. Just bring whatever you can afford. Even store-bought rolls are fine. We want everyone to feel comfortable regardless of their circumstances. Can't wait to show you the new renovations. XOXO, Diana. The condescension dripped from every carefully chosen word. Diana's attempt at sensitivity only highlighted how little she understood about my actual situation. The assumption that I'd be worried about contributing, the suggestion that store-bought anything would be my natural choice, the reassurance about feeling comfortable regardless of circumstances. Each phrase was a tiny knife wrapped in sisterly concern. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter and stared at it for several minutes, processing the familiar mixture of frustration and irony that had become my emotional default during family interactions. Diana had no idea that the new renovations she was eager to show off had been financed through the debt restructuring I'd arranged for Kevin's business. The marble countertops and custom cabinetry she'd been posting about on Instagram were, in a very real sense, paid for by the sister she was treating like a charity case. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Got Di's fancy invite. Pretty over the top, right? At least it's not at Mom and Dad's place this year. More room for Tyler's ego, tears of joy. You coming? His message was followed immediately by another. Bring whatever you want, sis. We all know money's tight for you right now. The casual assumption in that second message hit harder than Diana's elaborate kindness. Marcus genuinely believed he was being supportive by acknowledging my supposed financial struggles. In his mind, he was the successful older brother looking out for his less fortunate sister. The irony was suffocating. Marcus, whose house I'd saved from foreclosure, offering to ease my imaginary financial burden. Tyler's response came an hour later. Sarah, so excited for Thanksgiving. Di's been planning this for weeks. Rebecca and I can't wait to see everyone. Don't worry about bringing anything expensive. We're all family here. Even my youngest brother, whose mortgage I'd quietly restructured to save him from financial disaster, felt compelled to reassure me about keeping costs down. The pattern was so established, so automatic that I wondered if my family even heard themselves anymore. Every interaction began with an acknowledgement of my supposed poverty, followed by reassurances designed to make me feel included despite my circumstances. It was death by 1,000 small condescensions, each one delivered with genuine love and care. My parents called that evening, as they did every Tuesday. Mom's voice was warm but carried that familiar note of concern that had become the soundtrack of our relationship. We got Diana's invitation today. Isn't that lovely? She's worked so hard on that house. It looks beautiful in the photos, I agreed, thinking about the monthly reports I received from Thompson Holdings regarding the Rodriguez mortgage payments. We were talking about what to bring, Dad chimed in from the extension. Your mother made her famous green bean casserole, and we picked up a nice bottle of wine. Don't feel like you need to match what everyone else is doing, sweetheart. We all know you're doing your best. There it was again, the gentle reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Even my parents, who'd raised me to believe in hard work and achievement, had accepted the narrative that I was the struggling child who needed protection from her own limitations. Actually, I said carefully, I was thinking about bringing something special this year. Maybe trying a new recipe, or getting something really nice from that gourmet market downtown. The silence that followed was telling. I could practically hear my parents exchanging glances, worried that their financially struggling daughter was about to overspend on Thanksgiving dinner to keep up with her more successful siblings. Honey, Mom said gently, you don't need to prove anything. Diana specifically mentioned that everyone should just bring what they're comfortable with. There's no pressure to spend beyond your means. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with my parents carefully steering me away from any plans that might strain my imaginary budget. They suggested simple side dishes, reminded me that my presence was more important than my contribution, and generally treated me like someone who needed protection from her own poor financial judgment. After hanging up, I sat in my carefully maintained apartment, surrounded by discount furniture and generic groceries, and felt the weight of the performance I'd been maintaining for years. Every conversation required me to remember which financial struggles I'd mentioned, which dreams I'd had to give up, which opportunities I'd supposedly missed. The character I'd created, struggling Sarah, the family's well-meaning underachiever, had become so convincing that even I sometimes forgot it wasn't real. The next few days brought a cascade of family communications, each one reinforcing the same themes. Diana called to discuss menu planning, carefully assigning me the dinner rolls because it's something easy, and everyone loves them. She spent 20 minutes describing the organic, free-range turkey she'd ordered, the imported cheese for the appetizer board, and the wine selection Kevin had curated, all while making sure I understood that my contribution would be equally valued regardless of cost. Marcus texted photos of the expensive bourbon he'd bought for after-dinner drinks, adding, "Don't worry about matching this. I know it's pricey." Tyler sent a picture of the elaborate flower arrangement he and Rebecca had ordered, followed by, "Can't wait to see what everyone brings. Yours will be perfect no matter what." Each message was a small reminder of where I stood in the family's financial pecking order. My siblings weren't being cruel. They genuinely believed they were being considerate of my limitations. But the cumulative effect was crushing, like being slowly buried under an avalanche of good intentions. The Thursday before Thanksgiving, I had lunch with my assistant Emma Martinez, one of the few people who knew the full extent of my success. Emma had been with Meridian Financial Solutions for 3 years, starting as a receptionist and working her way up to become my most trusted confidant. She was also the only person who knew about Thompson Holdings and my family's unknowing dependence on my interventions. "Are you really going to sit through another dinner pretending to be broke?" she asked over salads at a downtown restaurant. "Sarah, you employ 180 people. You own 4 properties. Forbes wants to interview you. How long can you keep this up?" I picked at my food, considering the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. "It's not that simple, Emma. If I tell them now, everything changes. Marcus will realize I saved his house. Diana will know I've been subsidizing their lifestyle. Tyler will understand that his mortgage payments are manageable only because I intervened. How do I explain 3 years of deception?" "Maybe they'll be grateful," Emma suggested. "Maybe they'll understand that you were trying to help. Or maybe they'll feel manipulated and humiliated," I countered. "Maybe Marcus will insist on paying back every penny, even if it bankrupts him. Maybe Diana will refuse to accept any more help, even when Kevin's business needs it. Maybe Tyler will see it as proof that he can't succeed on his own." Emma nodded slowly, understanding the complexity of the situation. "But the alternative is continuing to let them treat you like you're failing at life while they succeed with your money." The conversation stayed with me through the weekend as I prepared for Thanksgiving. I drove to the gourmet market in my Honda Civic, passing the parking garage where my Tesla sat unused. I shopped for ingredients to make homemade dinner rolls, calculating that the cost would be exactly what my family expected me to spend. Enough to show effort, not enough to suggest I had money to spare. In the baking aisle, I ran into Jennifer, Marcus's wife, who was selecting ingredients for what appeared to be an elaborate dessert. She greeted me with the bright smile she always wore when encountering family members in public, as if our interactions were performance pieces for unseen audiences. "Sarah, how wonderful to see you. I'm making tiramisu for Thanksgiving. Marcus's favorite. It's so complicated, but worth it for special occasions." She paused, looking at my modest basket of flour, yeast, and butter. "Homemade rolls? How lovely. Diana will be so impressed that you're making them from scratch." The subtext was clear. Jennifer was making an elegant Italian dessert requiring expensive ingredients and advanced techniques, while I was managing the basic task of bread making. Even this innocent encounter reinforced the established hierarchy of our family's contributions. "The recipe looks challenging," I said, gesturing toward her overflowing cart of mascarpone, ladyfingers, and other specialty items. "Oh, it is. But when you're comfortable investing in quality ingredients, it makes all the difference. Of course, simple can be wonderful too," she added quickly, realizing how her comment might sound. I smiled and nodded, playing my role perfectly while calculating that the ingredients in her cart cost less than I'd spent on lunch the previous day. The performance had become so automatic that I could maintain it while simultaneously running profit projections for my company's upcoming expansion. The final catalyst came Monday evening, when Diana called with what she described as exciting news about Thanksgiving dinner. Her voice was practically vibrating with anticipation as she explained that Kevin had invited some business associates to join our family celebration. "It's going to be so wonderful, Sarah. Kevin's been trying to land this account for months, and when he mentioned our Thanksgiving plans, they said it sounded lovely and asked if they could join. It's the Peterson family. David owns Peterson Construction, and they just landed that huge municipal contract for the new library. They're exactly the kind of people Kevin needs to network with." My stomach dropped as I realized the implications. Thanksgiving dinner was being transformed from a family gathering into a business showcase, with Kevin using the holiday to impress potential clients, which meant the family dynamics that normally played out in private would now have an audience of strangers who would witness my role as the unsuccessful sister. "That sounds nice," I managed, though my mind was racing through the social mathematics of the situation. David Peterson was a name I recognized from Cleveland's business community, a successful contractor whose company had grown significantly in recent years. If he was bringing his family to dinner, they would expect to meet successful people, not someone who appeared to be struggling financially. I know it changes the dynamic a bit, Diana continued, oblivious to my concerns, but I think it'll be good for everyone. Kevin's so excited, and it shows how far he's come professionally. Plus, you'll get to meet some really successful people. Who knows, maybe they'll have some business connections that could help you. The final insult was wrapped in sisterly encouragement. The suggestion that meeting Kevin's business associates might somehow benefit my imaginary struggling career. Diana had no idea that I probably knew more about Peterson Construction's financial structure than Kevin did, having analyzed their debt-to-equity ratio during a consulting proposal 2 years earlier. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the stakes had fundamentally changed. What had been a private family performance was about to become a public humiliation, with strangers witnessing my supposed failure while celebrating my siblings' success. The thought of sitting through dinner while Kevin impressed his business contacts with his family's achievements, knowing that those achievements were built on my hidden financial support, was almost unbearable. For the first time in 3 years, I seriously considered revealing the truth. But the timing couldn't have been worse. Doing it now would seem like a desperate attempt to save face in front of Kevin's guests. Whatever decision I made about my family secret would have to wait until after Thanksgiving dinner, which meant enduring one more performance as struggling Sarah, while the people who owed their success to my money showed off for their business contacts. The irony was perfect and terrible. I would spend Thanksgiving watching my family impress strangers with wealth I had secretly provided, while being treated as the cautionary tale of what happens when someone doesn't achieve success. The stage was set for the most challenging performance of my life, and I had no idea how it would end. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp November weather that made Cleveland's lakefront beautiful. I woke up in my real home, watching the sunrise paint Lake Erie in shades of gold and orange through my floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine what it would be like to invite my family here, to show them the life I'd actually built instead of the cramped apartment they thought defined my existence. But reality quickly reasserted itself. By noon, I needed to be at Diana's house with my homemade dinner rolls, ready to play the role of struggling Sarah for an audience that now included Kevin's business associates. I'd spent the previous evening baking, using a recipe that was good enough to show effort but not so elaborate as to suggest I had money for premium ingredients. The drive to Diana's house in Lakeside Estates was a 20-minute journey between my two lives. I left the beautiful lakefront property where I actually lived, stopped at my apartment to pick up the rolls and change into the outfit I'd carefully selected for maximum mediocrity, then drove my Honda Civic through the gates of the exclusive neighborhood where 3 of my siblings lived on mortgages I'd secretly restructured. As I pulled into Diana's driveway, I couldn't help but notice the Peterson family's vehicles, a new Cadillac Escalade and a BMW sedan, that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Kevin was already working his networking magic, standing in the driveway, engaged in animated conversation with David Peterson about what appeared to be construction equipment. Diana's house looked like something from a magazine cover, with professional fall decorations adorning the entrance and the warm glow of expensive lighting visible through the windows. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was admiring the exterior of a home I essentially owned, maintained by people who had no idea their comfortable lifestyle depended on my financial intervention. "Sarah!" Diana's voice carried across the driveway as she emerged from the house wearing a designer dress that I recognized from a recent Instagram post. "You're here! Come meet the Petersons. They're absolutely wonderful people." Before I could respond, I found myself being guided toward the group in the driveway. David Peterson was a distinguished man in his 50s, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to success. His wife Margaret appeared to be around the same age, elegantly dressed in what was obviously expensive casual wear. Their adult daughter Stephanie, probably in her late 20s, had the polished look of someone who'd grown up with advantages. "David, Margaret, Stephanie, I'd like you to meet my sister-in-law Sarah," Diana announced, with the bright enthusiasm she reserved for social introductions. "Sarah works in... what is it again, something with computers?" The question was asked with Diana's trademark combination of affection and dismissal, as if my work was too small or incomprehensible to warrant accurate description. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest that came with these moments, knowing that the next few minutes would establish my place in the evening's social hierarchy. "I work in financial consulting," I replied simply, extending my hand to David Peterson. His handshake was firm and professional, though I caught the brief flicker of assessment in his eyes as he processed Diana's introduction and my modest appearance. "Financial consulting," David repeated with polite interest. "That's a broad field. What kind of clients do you typically work with?" The question was innocent enough, but I could feel Diana's attention sharpening. Any answer that suggested significant success would contradict the narrative she'd already established about my circumstances. I found myself in the familiar position of having to downplay my expertise to maintain my cover. "Small businesses mostly," I said carefully. "Basic financial planning, some debt management. Nothing too complex." Margaret Peterson smiled warmly. "That must be rewarding work, helping people get their finances in order. David's always saying how important good financial advice is for small business owners." "Oh, Sarah's very good at budgeting," Diana interjected with a laugh that was meant to sound supportive but carried an unmistakable edge. "She has to be, if you know what I mean. Not everyone can afford to throw money around like some of us." The comment hung in the air like a small explosion. David and Margaret exchanged a quick glance, clearly uncomfortable with Diana's casual reference to my supposed financial struggles. Stephanie looked down at her phone, suddenly finding something fascinating on her screen. Kevin, who'd been half listening while examining David's vehicle, turned toward us with the slightly panicked expression of someone who'd realized his wife was making their guests uncomfortable. "Diana, honey, maybe we should head inside? I think everyone's probably getting cold out here." But Diana was just getting started. The presence of Kevin's business associates seemed to energize her need to establish the family's social credentials, which apparently required emphasizing my position as the unsuccessful sister. "Of course. Let's go in so I can show you the house," she said, seamlessly transitioning into hostess mode. "Sarah, you can take your roles to the kitchen." I set aside a spot for them next to the other. Simpler contributions. As we moved toward the house, I found myself walking beside Stephanie Peterson, who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the dynamics she was witnessing. "Financial consulting sounds interesting," she said quietly. "I work in marketing for a tech startup downtown. It's amazing how many small businesses struggle with basic financial planning." I was about to respond when Diana's voice cut through our conversation. "Stephanie, you should see the kitchen. We just finished the renovation. Marble countertops, custom cabinetry, professional-grade appliances. Kevin spared no expense." She paused dramatically. "Of course, not everyone has the luxury of major renovations. Sarah's been in the same apartment for years now, haven't you?" The question was directed at me with that bright, false warmth that Diana used when she wanted to highlight someone's limitations while appearing concerned. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak as we entered the house I technically owned. The interior was undeniably stunning. Diana had excellent taste, and the renovation had transformed the space into something that belonged in an upscale design magazine. The kitchen was particularly impressive, with its gleaming marble surfaces and top-of-the-line appliances arranged in perfect harmony. "This is gorgeous," Margaret Peterson said, genuine admiration in her voice. "You have wonderful taste, Diana." "Thank you. It was such a project, but Kevin insisted we do it right. He always says that when you can afford quality, you should invest in it." Diana's eyes found mine across the kitchen. "Not everyone shares that philosophy, of course. Some people prefer to economize." David Peterson cleared his throat, clearly sensing the undercurrent of tension in Diana's comments. "Different people have different priorities," he said diplomatically. "Some folks prefer to invest in experiences rather than things." "Oh, absolutely," Diana agreed quickly, realizing she might be pushing too hard. "Sarah's always been very practical about money, very careful with every dollar. It's actually quite admirable, in its own way." The backhanded compliment was delivered with a smile that fooled no one. I watched the Petersons exchange another uncomfortable glance, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing some kind of family dynamic they hadn't signed up for. Marcus and Jennifer arrived in the middle of this awkward moment, bringing their own brand of subtle superiority to the gathering. Marcus immediately engaged David Peterson in conversation about business, clearly hoping to establish his own credentials as a successful professional. Jennifer air-kissed Diana and complimented the house with the enthusiasm of someone who understood the importance of proper social performance. "Sarah!" Marcus boomed, spotting me arranging my rolls on the designated plate. "There's my little sister. How's the consulting business? Still keeping you busy?" The question was asked with genuine affection, but the phrasing, "little sister, keeping you busy," reinforced the family narrative about my modest success. I smiled and gave a non-committal answer about steady work, aware that the Petersons were observing this interaction with growing fascination. Jennifer joined the conversation with her trademark blend of warmth and condescension. "Sarah works so hard," she told Margaret Peterson. "It's inspiring, really, watching someone make the best of their situation. Not everyone can have Marcus's natural talent for sales, but Sarah really maximizes her opportunities." The pause before opportunities was loaded with meaning. Jennifer, like Diana, seemed to view my presence as a chance to highlight her own family's success by contrast. The fact that she was doing this in front of Kevin's business associates made it even more pointed. Tyler and Rebecca arrived as tensions were building, bringing their own expectations about family hierarchy. Tyler, still glowing with the confidence of recent graduation and early career success, greeted the Petersons with the easy charm of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. "You must be Kevin's business associates," he said, shaking hands with professional enthusiasm. "I'm Tyler, Diana's brother-in-law. I work in marketing for Hartwell & Associates downtown. Always exciting to meet other business professionals." Rebecca, his fiancée, was equally polished in her introductions. As a teacher, she had the kind of respectable career that played well in social situations, without being threatening to anyone's ego. She and Tyler represented the family's rising stars, young, educated, and obviously destined for continued success, which left me as the obvious counterpoint to their achievements. As my parents arrived and the full family was assembled, the social mathematics became increasingly clear. The Petersons found themselves at a dinner where they were meant to witness Kevin's successful family connections. But the narrative required someone to serve as the example of what happens when you don't achieve success. My father Robert and mother Linda brought their own complicated feelings about my situation to the gathering. They loved me unconditionally, but they also worried about me constantly, and their concern was evident in every interaction. Mom immediately fussed over whether I'd eaten enough lately, while Dad asked careful questions about my work that avoided any specifics that might highlight my limitations. "Sarah's always been our independent one," Mom told Margaret Peterson, with the pride that parents reserve for children who haven't quite met expectations but are trying their best. "Very determined, very hardworking. Sometimes I worry she works too hard for, well, you know how it is in small business." The incomplete sentence spoke volumes. Mom couldn't quite say that I worked too hard for too little money, but the implication was clear to everyone present. I was the family member who needed gentle protection from her own limitations. As we gathered in the living room for pre-dinner drinks, the social dynamics crystallized into something almost unbearable. Kevin was holding court with David Peterson, discussing business opportunities and mutual connections. Marcus and Tyler flanked them, contributing their own professional credentials to the conversation. Diana and Jennifer managed the social aspects with practiced ease, ensuring the Petersons felt welcomed and impressed. I found myself relegated to helping my mother arrange appetizers in the kitchen, a role that felt simultaneously protective and humiliating. Through the doorway, I could hear Kevin explaining his business expansion plans to David, describing the financial restructuring that had made his growth possible without any awareness that he was talking to the person who'd arranged it. "It's amazing how things work out sometimes," Kevin was saying. "Just when the business was really struggling, this investment company appeared with exactly the kind of financing we needed. Thompson Holdings, they specialize in helping small businesses restructure debt. Best decision I ever made, working with them." My hands stilled on the cheese board I was arranging. Kevin was unknowingly crediting my company with saving his business, while I stood in the kitchen being treated as the family member who couldn't afford quality cheese. The irony was so perfect it was almost funny, except that nothing about this situation felt humorous anymore. Margaret Peterson appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Can I help with anything?" she asked, clearly looking for an escape from the increasingly awkward social dynamics in the living room. That's very kind, my mother replied, but Sarah and I have everything under control. Don't we, sweetheart? I nodded and continued arranging appetizers, acutely aware that Margaret was observing the interaction with the careful attention of someone trying to understand complex family dynamics. The positioning was clear: Mom and the struggling daughter handling kitchen duties while the successful family members entertained important guests. As we prepared to move to the dining room, I realized that the evening was only going to get worse. Dinner conversation would inevitably focus on everyone's achievements and future plans, with the Petersons expected to be impressed by the Thompson family's various successes. Everyone except me, of course, whose role was to provide the cautionary tale that made everyone else's accomplishments shine brighter. What none of them knew was that the woman they were treating as the family failure was actually the person who'd made all their success stories possible. But as we took our seats around Diana's beautiful dining table, purchased with money from a business I'd saved, I wondered how much longer I could maintain this performance before something inside me finally snapped. Dinner began with Diana's elaborate presentation of the meal she'd orchestrated, each dish introduced with details about its preparation and cost that were clearly meant to impress the Peterson family. The organic, free-range turkey had been special ordered from a farm in Amish country. The wine was from Kevin's personal collection, bottles I knew had been purchased with profits from a business I'd saved. The side dishes were artfully arranged on serving platters that probably cost more than most families spent on their entire Thanksgiving meal. "Sarah, would you mind bringing your rolls from the kitchen?" Diana asked sweetly, as everyone took their seats around the dining table. "I put them on that nice plate by the stove." The request seemed innocent enough until I retrieved the plate and realized what Diana had done. My homemade dinner rolls, which were actually quite good, had been placed on a simple ceramic plate that looked distinctly out of place among the elegant serving dishes dominating the table. Every other contribution was presented on matching dinnerware that complemented Diana's carefully curated aesthetic, while my rolls sat on what was obviously the least expensive plate in the house. "Those look delicious, Sarah," Margaret Peterson said kindly as I set the plate down. "Homemade bread is always special." "They really are wonderful," my mother added, with the slightly defensive tone she used when she sensed criticism of her children. "Sarah's always been such a good baker." She learned from my mother, who made everything from scratch during the Depression. The comment, meant to be supportive, only reinforced the narrative that I was someone who baked out of necessity rather than choice. Diana's smile was radiant as she began serving the meal, clearly pleased with how the social dynamics were unfolding. David Peterson, attempting to include everyone in conversation, turned to me with polite interest. "Sarah, what got you into financial consulting? It seems like valuable work in today's economy." Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in with brotherly enthusiasm. "Sarah's always been good with numbers. Even as kids, she was the one who helped Mom balance the checkbook. She's got this natural instinct for stretching a dollar, you know? Really understands how to make a little go a long way." The compliment was genuine, but devastating. Marcus genuinely admired what he saw as my ability to survive on limited resources, having no idea that his own comfortable lifestyle was subsidized by my wealth. Around the table, I watched my family members nodding approvingly at this characterization of my supposed financial acumen. "That's exactly the kind of expertise small businesses need," David replied diplomatically, "someone who understands the challenges of operating on tight margins." Tyler, eager to contribute to the conversation while establishing his own credentials, added his perspective. "Sarah's taught us all about being practical with money. She's like our family's voice of financial reason, always reminding us not to overspend, to think carefully about big purchases. She keeps us grounded." The description made me sound like a cautionary tale, rather than a successful professional. I was the family member who helped others avoid poor financial decisions because I supposedly lived with the consequences of such choices every day. Each well-meaning comment pushed me deeper into the role of the struggling sister whose hardships served as lessons for everyone else. Jennifer, not to be outdone in demonstrating her family's financial awareness, contributed her own observation. "It's really admirable how Sarah makes her situation work. She's shown us that you don't need a lot of money to be happy. Sometimes I think we could all learn from her example about finding contentment with less." The condescension was breathtaking. Jennifer, whose overspending had nearly cost Marcus his house before I intervened, was now positioning my supposed poverty as a lifestyle choice worthy of admiration. The woman whose debt I'd restructured was praising me for living simply while she enjoyed the financial security my intervention had provided. Diana seized the moment to showcase her own domestic achievements. Speaking of being practical, Sarah, wait until you see what Kevin and I have planned for the kitchen expansion. We're adding a wine cellar and a butler's pantry. Kevin says if you're going to invest in your home, you should do it right. She gestured toward the kitchen with obvious pride. Of course, not everyone has the luxury of major renovations. But we're at a stage in our lives where we can afford to create the space we've always dreamed of. The contrast was clear. Diana and Kevin were successful enough to expand their already impressive home, while I was still living in the same modest apartment I'd occupied for years. The fact that their expansion was possible only because I'd saved Kevin's business made the moment surreal. Rebecca, Tyler's fiancée, attempted to steer the conversation in a more inclusive direction. Every family has different priorities. Some people prefer to invest in experiences rather than things. Exactly, Diana agreed enthusiastically. Though I have to say, Sarah, you don't really seem to do much traveling either. When was your last vacation? I can't remember you mentioning any trips. The question was posed with false concern, as if she was worried about my lack of leisure activities. In reality, I'd taken several vacations in the past year: a weekend in Paris, a wine tour through Napa Valley, a week in Costa Rica. But I couldn't mention any of them without contradicting my established financial narrative. I prefer to stay close to home, I replied carefully. Travel can be expensive. My father, sensing tension, attempted to redirect the conversation. Sarah's always been more interested in her work than in material things. She gets satisfaction from helping people with their financial problems. That's true, Mom agreed. She's always been our practical one. Even in college, she worked multiple jobs and lived so frugally. We worried about her sometimes, working so hard for so little, but she never complained. The description of my college years was accurate, but misleading. I had worked multiple jobs and lived frugally, but those experiences had taught me the value of money and motivated me to build something significant. My parents saw only the struggle, not the foundation it was creating for future success. Kevin, basking in the attention from his business associates, decided to share his own perspective on financial success. The key is taking calculated risks, he told David Peterson. When my business was struggling a couple years ago, I could have played it safe and just tried to survive. Instead, I found the right financial partners and invested in growth. He was referring to the debt restructuring I'd arranged through Thompson Holdings, unknowingly crediting my company with his turnaround, while positioning himself as a savvy entrepreneur who'd made bold decisions. The irony was suffocating. Thompson Holdings has been incredible to work with, Kevin continued. They really understand small business challenges. Unlike traditional lenders, they look at potential rather than just current numbers. That's the kind of forward thinking that separates successful businesses from those that just survive. David Peterson nodded approvingly. Smart financing is crucial for growth. Too many business owners don't understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. Exactly, Marcus interjected, eager to demonstrate his own financial sophistication. I learned that lesson early in my marriage. Jennifer and I had some credit challenges when we first got together, but we found an investment company that helped us restructure everything. Best decision we ever made. He was describing the debt consolidation I'd arranged for them through Thompson Holdings, again without any awareness of my involvement. The conversation had become a testimonial for my company's services, delivered by people who were simultaneously treating me as financially incompetent. Tyler joined the chorus of praise for anonymous financial salvation. Rebecca and I had a similar experience with our mortgage. The original terms were going to kill us, but this investment firm, Thompson Holdings, same company Kevin used, completely restructured the loan, turned an impossible situation into something manageable. I sat in stunned silence as my 3 siblings unknowingly credited my company with their financial stability while treating me as the family member who couldn't manage money. The Peterson family was witnessing what appeared to be a remarkable coincidence. 3 successful siblings who'd all been helped by the same investment firm, while their unsuccessful sister struggled with basic financial planning. Stephanie Peterson, who'd been quietly observing the family dynamics, finally spoke up. "That's an interesting coincidence, that you all worked with the same company. Thompson Holdings must have quite a reputation in Cleveland." "They're amazing," Diana confirmed. "Very selective about their clients, but when they take you on, they really transform your situation. Kevin's business has tripled in size since we started working with them." Margaret Peterson turned to me with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. "Sarah, in your consulting work, do you ever refer clients to companies like Thompson Holdings? It sounds like they do exactly the kind of debt restructuring you mentioned earlier." The question was innocent but dangerous. Any knowledge I displayed about Thompson Holdings would be suspicious, since my family believed I worked with much smaller, simpler cases. But complete ignorance would seem odd for someone in financial consulting. "I've heard of them," I said carefully. "They have a good reputation in the industry." "You should reach out to them," Tyler suggested helpfully. "Maybe they could give you some referral business. Small consulting firms probably need all the connections they can get." The suggestion that I should seek referral crumbs from my own company was the final straw. My youngest brother, whose financial stability depended entirely on my intervention, was advising me to pursue business relationships with the company I owned. The accumulated weight of the evening's condescension finally reached a breaking point. "That's an interesting idea," I managed, my voice carefully controlled despite the rage building inside me. Diana, sensing that the conversation was highlighting differences she wanted to emphasize, pushed further. "You know, Sarah, maybe this is exactly what you need to take your consulting business to the next level. Kevin could introduce you to his contact at Thompson Holdings. Networking is so important in business, and you've always been a bit isolated professionally." The characterization of me as professionally isolated, delivered while discussing the company I'd built from nothing, was breathtaking in its irony. Diana was offering to help me network with my own employees, while positioning herself as someone who understood business relationships better than I did. "I'd be happy to make that introduction," Kevin offered generously. "My account manager there is fantastic, really understands small business needs, though I should warn you they're pretty selective about their clients. They mainly work with established businesses that have significant growth potential." The implication was clear. My little consulting operation might not meet Thompson Holdings' standards for client selection. Kevin was graciously offering to help me pursue a business relationship with my own company while suggesting I might not qualify for our services. Around the table, my family members nodded approvingly at Kevin's generous offer. Here was another example of the successful siblings helping the struggling sister, offering connections and advice to someone who clearly needed guidance. The Peterson family watched this interaction with growing fascination, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing family dynamics more complex than anyone had initially indicated. What they couldn't know was that they were watching the CEO of Thompson Holdings being offered an introduction to her own company by people whose financial stability existed only because of her secret interventions. The woman being treated as the family charity case was actually the benefactor who'd made everyone else's success possible. As Diana began clearing plates for dessert, announcing her elaborate tiramisu presentation, I realized that I'd reached the absolute limit of what I could endure. The combination of public humiliation, professional dismissal, and unknowing testimonials for my own company had created a perfect storm of irony that was about to explode in ways my family couldn't possibly anticipate. The breaking point was approaching, and when it came, everything they thought they knew about Sarah Thompson was about to change forever. The moment that changed everything began with Diana's phone ringing, just as she was about to present her elaborate tiramisu. She glanced at the screen and frowned, clearly annoyed by the interruption to her perfectly orchestrated evening. "I'm so sorry," she said to the Peterson family. "This is probably work-related. Kevin, would you start serving dessert? I'll just be a moment." She stepped into the kitchen to take the call, her voice carrying back to the dining room in frustrated whispers. We could hear fragments of her conversation, something about a deadline, a client emergency, and weekend work that was apparently ruining her holiday plans. "Everything okay?" Kevin called toward the kitchen, his concern evident. Having business associates present made any family crisis more complicated. Diana returned to the dining room with a strained smile that didn't quite hide her irritation. "I'm afraid I need to handle a work situation. One of our major clients is having a crisis, and they need materials prepared for a Monday morning meeting. I'll have to go into the office tomorrow to handle it. Margaret Peterson made sympathetic noises about work emergencies during holidays, while David offered understanding about the demands of client service. The conversation turned to the challenges of modern business, with everyone sharing stories about holiday disruptions and demanding clients. "Which client is it?" Kevin asked, clearly hoping it wasn't anything that might affect his networking opportunity. "Meridian Financial Solutions," Diana replied with obvious frustration. "They're one of our biggest accounts, but they can be incredibly demanding. The CEO is this woman who apparently never takes time off and expects everyone else to be available 24/7. Thompson, something. I can never remember her first name." The words hit me like a physical blow. Diana was talking about my company, referring to me as this woman whose name she couldn't remember, complaining about demands I'd never made. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized what was happening. Stephanie Peterson looked confused. "Thompson? That's interesting. Wasn't Thompson Holdings the investment company you were all talking about earlier?" "Different company," Diana said dismissively. "Thompson is apparently a common name in Cleveland finance. This one is much bigger. They employ hundreds of people and work with major corporations. Completely different league from the investment firm that helped Kevin." The irony was staggering. Diana was complaining about demands from the CEO of Meridian Financial Solutions, me, while crediting Thompson Holdings, also me, with her family's financial stability. She was describing two different aspects of my business empire, while treating me as the family member who couldn't understand complex financial concepts. Marcus leaned forward with interest. "Meridian Financial Solutions. That name sounds familiar. Aren't they the company that was in Cleveland Business Journal a few months ago? Something about rapid growth and innovative debt restructuring?" My heart started racing. Marcus had apparently seen the article about my company, though he clearly hadn't connected it to his supposedly struggling sister sitting across from him. "That's them," Diana confirmed, her annoyance evident. "They're this massive success story, which makes them think they can demand miracles from their marketing agency. The CEO apparently built the company from nothing in just 7 years. Very impressive, but also very demanding." Tyler, ever eager to contribute to business conversations, added his own knowledge. "I've heard about them at work. They're supposed to be revolutionizing small business finance. The CEO is some kind of financial genius who specializes in saving companies from bankruptcy. The description of my professional achievements, delivered by people who thought I couldn't afford quality groceries, was surreal. My family was unknowingly praising my business acumen while simultaneously treating me as financially incompetent." David Peterson, his business owner's curiosity piqued, asked, "What kind of work are you doing for them?" "Rebranding campaign," Diana replied. "They're going public next year, so they need everything refreshed: logo, website, marketing materials, investor presentations. It's a huge project, worth millions to our agency." I felt my carefully constructed world starting to collapse. Diana was working on my company's rebranding without knowing she was talking to the CEO. The going public announcement was supposed to be confidential information, shared only with our marketing agency and legal team. Margaret Peterson smiled. "It sounds like prestigious work, even if the timing is inconvenient." "It is," Diana agreed, her professional pride overriding her holiday frustration. Meridian Financial Solutions is exactly the kind of client that can make a marketing career. Working with a CEO who's built a $57 million company from scratch, it's the kind of experience you put at the top of your resume. The specific revenue figure sent shockwaves through me. That number was from our confidential investor materials, not public information. Diana had access to details about my company's financial performance, while treating me as someone who needed advice about managing money. Kevin, sensing an opportunity to impress David Peterson, jumped into the conversation. "Diana's been working nights and weekends on this project. The client apparently has incredibly high standards and wants everything perfect before they go public." "Sounds like a demanding boss," David observed with the understanding of someone who'd managed challenging business relationships. "You have no idea," Diana laughed. According to the briefs we received, this CEO is brilliant but incredibly private. She's built this enormous company while maintaining almost complete anonymity. Nobody even knows what she looks like. All our meetings have been with her marketing director. The conversation was becoming increasingly surreal. Diana was describing my deliberate privacy while I sat at her dinner table, being treated as the family member who couldn't understand sophisticated business concepts. Meridian Financial Solutions, Diana replied with obvious frustration. They're one of our biggest accounts, but they can be incredibly demanding. The CEO is this woman who apparently never takes time off and expects everyone else to be available 24/7. Thompson, something. I can never remember her first name. The words hit me like a physical blow. Diana was talking about my company, referring to me as this woman whose name she couldn't remember, complaining about demands I'd never made. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized what was happening. Stephanie Peterson looked confused. Thompson? That's interesting. Wasn't Thompson Holdings the investment company you were all talking about earlier? Different company, Diana said dismissively. Thompson is apparently a common name in Cleveland finance. This one is much bigger. They employ hundreds of people and work with major corporations. Completely different league from the investment firm that helped Kevin. The irony was staggering. Diana was complaining about demands from the CEO of Meridian Financial Solutions, me, while crediting Thompson Holdings, also me, with her family's financial stability. She was describing two different aspects of my business empire, while treating me as the family member who couldn't understand complex financial concepts. Marcus leaned forward with interest. Meridian Financial Solutions. That name sounds familiar. Aren't they the company that was in Cleveland Business Journal a few months ago? Something about rapid growth and innovative debt restructuring? My heart started racing. Marcus had apparently seen the article about my company, though he clearly hadn't connected it to his supposedly struggling sister sitting across from him. That's them, Diana confirmed, her annoyance evident. They're this massive success story, which makes them think they can demand miracles from their marketing agency. The CEO apparently built the company from nothing in just 7 years. Very impressive, but also very demanding. Tyler, ever eager to contribute to business conversations, added his own knowledge. I've heard about them at work. They're supposed to be revolutionizing small business finance. The CEO is some kind of financial genius who specializes in saving companies from bankruptcy. The description of my professional achievements, delivered by people who thought I couldn't afford quality groceries, was surreal. My family was unknowingly praising my business acumen while simultaneously treating me as financially incompetent. David Peterson, his business owner's curiosity piqued, asked, "What kind of work are you doing for them?" "Rebranding campaign," Diana replied. "They're going public next year, so they need everything refreshed: logo, website, marketing materials, investor presentations. It's a huge project, worth millions to our agency." I felt my carefully constructed world starting to collapse. Diana was working on my company's rebranding without knowing she was talking to the CEO. The going public announcement was supposed to be confidential information, shared only with our marketing agency and legal team. Margaret Peterson smiled. "It sounds like prestigious work, even if the timing is inconvenient." "It is," Diana agreed, her professional pride overriding her holiday frustration. Meridian Financial Solutions is exactly the kind of client that can make a marketing career. Working with a CEO who's built a $57 million company from scratch, it's the kind of experience you put at the top of your resume. The specific revenue figure sent shockwaves through me. That number was from our confidential investor materials, not public information. Diana had access to details about my company's financial performance, while treating me as someone who needed advice about managing money. Kevin, sensing an opportunity to impress David Peterson, jumped into the conversation. Diana's been working nights and weekends on this project. The client apparently has incredibly high standards and wants everything perfect before they go public. "Sounds like a demanding boss," David observed with the understanding of someone who'd managed challenging business relationships. "You have no idea," Diana laughed. According to the briefs we received, This CEO is brilliant, but incredibly private. She's built this enormous company while maintaining almost complete anonymity. Nobody even knows what she looks like. All our meetings have been with her marketing director. The conversation was becoming increasingly surreal. Diana was describing my deliberate privacy while I sat at her dinner table, being treated as the family member who couldn't understand sophisticated business concepts. Stephanie Peterson, who had been following the conversation with growing interest, made an observation that sent ice through my veins. Thompson? Wait, wasn't the investment company Thompson Holdings? And now you're working with a CEO named Thompson? That seems like quite a coincidence. Diana waved dismissively. Different companies entirely. Thompson Holdings is this small, specialized investment firm that helps local businesses. Meridian Financial Solutions is a major corporation with clients across multiple states, completely different scales of operation. My mother, who'd been listening to this business discussion with the polite attention of someone out of her depth, suddenly spoke up. Thompson is Sarah's last name, too. Funny how many Thompsons are in the financial business in Cleveland. The comment was innocent, meant to contribute something to a conversation she didn't fully understand, but it created a moment of silence as everyone processed the coincidence of names. Tyler laughed. Can you imagine if Sarah was secretly this successful CEO everyone's talking about? That would be the plot twist of the century. The joke was met with amused chuckles from around the table. The idea that struggling Sarah could be the CEO of a $57 million company was so absurd, it was genuinely funny to everyone present. Right, Marcus grinned. Our Sarah, who clips coupons and drives a 7-year-old Honda, is secretly running a financial empire. That would explain why she's so good at stretching a dollar. Even my parents joined in the gentle laughter, finding humor in the impossible notion that their practical daughter could be the anonymous business mogul Diana was describing. But David Peterson wasn't laughing. As a successful business owner himself, he'd been following the conversation with professional interest, and something was clearly bothering him about the coincidences piling up. Sarah, he said carefully, what exactly do you do in financial consulting? You mentioned small businesses earlier, but I'm curious about the specifics. The question was asked with the sharp focus of someone who'd spent decades evaluating business claims and detecting inconsistencies. Around the table, conversation quieted as everyone waited for my response. Loan. I felt the weight of 3 years of deception pressing down on me. Every eye in the room was focused on me, waiting for another vague description of my modest consulting work. Diana was checking her phone, probably reading emails from my marketing director about projects I'd personally approved. My siblings were smiling with the comfortable superiority of people who'd already categorized my professional limitations. I help companies restructure their debt, I said slowly, and develop strategies for sustainable growth. What size companies? David pressed, his business instincts clearly engaged. The moment stretched like a taut wire. I could continue the deception, give another deflecting answer, and maintain the comfortable fiction that had defined my family relationships for years. Or I could tell the truth and watch everything I'd carefully constructed come crashing down. Diana looked up from her phone with sudden alarm. Oh no, my contact at Meridian just texted. They need the preliminary branding materials reviewed by their CEO personally before Monday. I'll have to reach out to her directly instead of going through the marketing director. She started scrolling through her contacts, muttering, what was her name again? Sarah something? Sarah Thompson? Wait. The silence that followed was deafening. Diana's finger hovered over her phone screen as she stared at the name she'd found in her work contacts. Slowly, her eyes lifted from the device to look directly at me. Sarah Thompson, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The CEO of Meridian Financial Solutions is named Sarah Thompson. Around the table, I watched the pieces start falling into place in my family's minds. The coincidence of names, the timing of the business discussion, the specific revenue figures Diana had mentioned, it was all too much to ignore. David Peterson, his business acumen cutting through the confusion, asked the question that would shatter 3 years of carefully maintained deception. Sarah, what's the name of your consulting company? I looked around the table at my family members, seeing the dawning realization in their eyes. My parents' confused expressions, Marcus's dropping jaw, Tyler's stunned comprehension, Diana's phone, still displaying my name and number from her work contacts. The moment had arrived. After 3 years of playing the struggling sister, while secretly paying their mortgages and supporting their lifestyles, the truth was about to explode across Diana's perfectly set Thanksgiving table. "Meridian Financial Solutions," I said quietly. "I'm the CEO Diana's been complaining about. And Thompson Holdings, the investment company that saved all your mortgages, that's my company too." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Peterson family, outsiders to our complicated dynamics, seemed to understand that they were witnessing a family revelation of epic proportions. Diana's phone slipped from her hand and clattered onto her expensive marble countertop. Marcus's mouth opened and closed without sound. Tyler looked like he'd been hit by lightning. My parents stared at me as if I'd suddenly grown wings. In that moment of stunned silence, 3 years of carefully constructed lies crumbled into dust, and Sarah Thompson, the struggling sister, finally became Sarah Thompson, the CEO who'd been secretly holding her family's financial world together all along. The explosion that followed my revelation was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed in my family. Diana shot to her feet so quickly that her chair toppled backward, crashing onto the hardwood floor with a sound that echoed through the stunned silence. "That's impossible," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and growing horror. "You can't be. You live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old car. You bring store-bought food to family dinners." Marcus was staring at me as if I'd suddenly transformed into a completely different person. "Sarah, this isn't funny. Stop joking around. The Petersons don't need to hear our families." "It's not a joke," I interrupted quietly. "I am the CEO of Meridian Financial Solutions. I founded the company 7 years ago. We employ 320 people across 4 states. Our annual revenue last year was $57 million, which Diana just quoted from our confidential investor materials." Tyler's face had gone completely white. But you said you worked with small businesses. You said you did basic financial planning." "I do work with small businesses," I replied, "including Kevin's hardware stores, Marcus's debt consolidation, and Tyler's mortgage restructuring. I've been working with all your small businesses for 3 years, through Thompson Holdings." The implications hit Diana first, probably because she'd spent the evening complaining about the demanding CEO, who was apparently me. "You mean when I've been working nights and weekends? The impossible deadlines, the perfectionist CEO who never seems satisfied." "You've been working for me," I confirmed. "And doing excellent work, by the way. The rebranding campaign is exceptional. I've been very pleased with Livingston Marketing's efforts." Kevin looked like he was going to be sick. "Thompson Holdings, the investment company that saved my business. That was you?" "That was me." The Peterson family sat frozen in their chairs, clearly realizing they'd stumbled into a family drama far more complex than anyone had indicated. David Peterson, his business experience helping him process the revelation faster than my relatives, was the first outsider to speak. "So when Kevin was telling me about the investment firm that restructured his debt," he said carefully, "he was unknowingly describing a company owned by the sister-in-law you've all been treating as unsuccessful?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Margaret Peterson looked genuinely uncomfortable, while Stephanie appeared fascinated by the unfolding family dynamics. Marcus stood up abruptly, his face flushed with what I recognized as deep embarrassment mixed with anger. "This is insane. Sarah, if you're really this successful CEO, why have you been letting us think you were struggling? Why didn't you tell us?" "Because of exactly this," I replied, gesturing toward the chaos around the table. "Because I knew that money would change everything between us. Because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have." Diana was pacing behind her fallen chair, her mind clearly racing through every interaction we'd had over the past 3 years. "Oh my God. Every family dinner. Every time I felt sorry for you. Every time I tried to help you network or find better opportunities. You were trying to help a multi-millionaire find entry-level work," I finished for her. Jennifer, who'd been silent since the revelation, suddenly spoke up with a voice tight with humiliation. Marcus, remember when we were having those money problems? When you said we found an investment company that would help us? Marcus nodded, still looking dazed. That was Sarah, Jennifer continued, her face reddening. Sarah saved our house. Sarah prevented our foreclosure. And we've been treating her like she was the one who couldn't manage money. Tyler sank into his chair as if his legs had given out. My mortgage. The one I couldn't afford. The company that restructured it and saved me from bankruptcy. Thompson Holdings, I confirmed. Which is a subsidiary of Meridian Financial Solutions. Which I own entirely. My parents, who'd been sitting in stunned silence, finally found their voices. Dad's question came out in a hoarse whisper. Sarah, honey, when you say you own this company, what exactly does that mean? It means I'm worth approximately $43 million, I said simply. Not counting real estate investments, which would add another $14 million. Mom actually gasped. $57 million? As of our last valuation, yes. The number seemed to hit my family like a physical force. These were people who'd spent the evening offering me career advice and financial guidance. People who'd worried about my ability to afford decent groceries, suddenly confronted with the reality that I was wealthier than all of them combined by several orders of magnitude. Kevin was shaking his head in disbelief. But the apartment, the car, the way you dress, the way you live. I maintain the apartment as a cover, I explained. I actually live in a lakefront property in Mentor. The Honda is for family events. My garage also contains a Tesla Model S and a 1967 Porsche 911. Diana stopped pacing and whirled to face me. You've been lying to us for 3 years? I've been protecting myself for 3 years, I corrected. From exactly the kind of reaction I'm seeing right now. Protecting yourself? Marcus's voice was rising with indignation. Sarah, we're your family. We had a right to know. Did you? I asked calmly. What right did you have to know details about my personal finances? When did I ever ask about your salary, Marcus? When did I demand to see your investment portfolio or question your spending choices? David Peterson cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should give you some privacy, too. No, Diana said sharply. Stay, please. I want witnesses to this conversation because I'm having trouble believing what I'm hearing. She turned back to me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of fury, embarrassment, and something that looked almost like betrayal. Sarah, do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I spent the entire evening introducing you to important business contacts as my unsuccessful sister-in-law who needs career guidance. I didn't ask you to introduce me that way, I pointed out. You made assumptions about my circumstances and built narratives around those assumptions. I never confirmed or encouraged those narratives. Tyler was staring at his hands, apparently processing the full implications of what he'd learned. You saved my house, he said quietly. When I was about to lose everything because I'd overextended myself, you saved me. And I've been giving you advice about managing money. You've been giving me advice about managing money while living in a house you can afford only because I restructured your debt, I agreed. The irony hasn't been lost on me. Margaret Peterson, clearly uncomfortable with witnessing such an intense family confrontation, made another attempt to excuse their family. We really should leave you to discuss this privately. Actually, I said, surprising myself with the decision, I'd like you to stay. You've spent the evening watching my family treat me with condescension and pity. I think it's important that you witness the resolution. Diana was pulling up information on her phone, clearly trying to verify my claims. Meridian Financial Solutions, founded by Sarah Thompson, headquarters in downtown Cleveland. Forbes, 40 under 40 feet nominee. She looked up from her screen with an expression of complete bewilderment. Forbes nominated you for their 40 under 40 feet list? Last year, I confirmed. I declined the interview. I prefer to maintain my privacy. Marcus was shaking his head slowly. Sarah, I don't understand. If you've been this successful all along, why have you let us feel superior to you? Why have you endured our condescension, I suggested. Pity? Constant reminders that I'm the family failure? "We never said you were a failure," Diana protested. "You didn't have to say it explicitly," I replied. "It was clear in every interaction. The careful way you'd assign me the simplest tasks at family gatherings, the way you'd explain basic financial concepts to me, the way you'd offer to introduce me to successful people who might help my little business." Jennifer looked stricken. "Sarah, we were trying to be supportive. We thought you were struggling." "You thought I was struggling because it made you feel better about your own situations," I said bluntly. "Having a sister who was less successful than you validated your choices and made you feel superior." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. I could see my family members processing it, recognizing the uncomfortable truth in what I'd said. Kevin, who'd been silent since learning that I'd saved his business, finally spoke up. "The debt restructuring you arranged for me, the business plan guidance, the capital injection that let me focus on one profitable store instead of 3 failing ones. Why did you do all that anonymously?" "Because I wanted to help you succeed, not become dependent on me," I explained. "If you'd known the money came from family, it would have felt like charity. This way you could maintain your pride and your sense of accomplishment." "But you also maintained your cover story," Diana pointed out accusingly. "You helped us while letting us think you were the one who needed help." "Yes," I admitted, "I did. Because I'd learned from watching other wealthy families that money destroys relationships. I wanted to help you succeed without creating the dynamics that money typically creates in families." Tyler looked up with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, all this time I've been treating you like the little sister who couldn't figure out life. And you've been taking care of all of us." The emotion in his voice seemed to break something open in the room. The anger and confusion that had dominated the conversation since my revelation gave way to something more complex, a mixture of gratitude, shame, and the dawning realization of how fundamentally their understanding of our family had been wrong. But Diana wasn't ready to let go of her anger. "Taking care of us?" she repeated. "Sarah, you've been manipulating us. You've been playing some kind of elaborate game where you get to be the secret benefactor while we humiliate ourselves treating you like charity case." "I've been protecting myself and helping you," I corrected. "The manipulation has been unintentional, but I won't apologize for choosing to help my family succeed rather than letting them fail." David Peterson, who'd been observing this exchange with the analytical attention of an experienced businessman, finally offered his perspective. "What Sarah has described is actually quite sophisticated family wealth management. She's provided assistance in a way that preserved everyone's dignity and motivation while ensuring their success." Diana turned on him with fury. "She's made fools of us." "No," David replied calmly. "She's made you successful. Kevin's business expansion, which has clearly been profitable, was made possible by her intervention. Without it, based on what I heard earlier, he would have lost everything." The truth of David's assessment was undeniable, and the room fell silent as my family confronted the reality that their comfortable lives, their success stories, their financial security, all of it had been quietly supported by the sister they'd been treating as their cautionary tale. The reckoning was far from over, but the foundation of 3 years of deception had been completely demolished. Now we would have to figure out how to build something new from the wreckage of our old family dynamic. The Peterson family finally excused themselves around 9 o'clock, leaving behind business cards and promises to continue conversations under less dramatic circumstances. David Peterson's parting words to me were both professional and personal. "Sarah, what you've built is remarkable. What you've done for your family is even more impressive. I hope they come to understand that." Margaret hugged me goodbye with genuine warmth, whispering, "Family dynamics are complicated, but love finds a way." Stephanie, ever the millennial, asked if she could connect with me on LinkedIn, clearly more impressed by meeting a successful female CEO than concerned about the family drama she'd witnessed. After they left, my family and I were alone with the wreckage of 3 years of carefully constructed deception. The dining room looked like a battlefield. Diana's overturned chair, scattered napkins, plates of untouched dessert, and the emotional debris of revelations that had shattered everyone's understanding of our relationships. My parents were the first to break the heavy silence. Dad walked over to where I was still sitting at the table and did something he hadn't done since I was a child. He pulled me into a fierce hug that lasted nearly a minute. "Sarah Elizabeth Thompson," he said when he finally released me, using my full name the way he had when I was in trouble as a kid. "I am so proud of you I don't have words. And I am so sorry we made you feel like you couldn't share this with us." Mom joined the embrace, tears streaming down her face. "Sweetheart, we failed you. We were so busy worrying about your success that we missed the fact that you'd already achieved more than we ever dreamed possible." Their unconditional love and immediate acceptance cracked something open inside me that I'd been holding closed for years. For the first time since starting my company, I felt like I could share my achievements with the people who'd raised me to work hard and dream big. "I wanted to tell you so many times," I admitted. "When Forbes called, when we made the INC 500 list, when I bought the lakefront house, I wanted to celebrate with you, but I was scared that everything would change between us." "Everything has changed," Mom said gently. "But not the way you feared. We're not proud of you because you're wealthy, Sarah. We're proud because you built something meaningful while staying true to your values." Tyler was next to approach, his earlier emotional breakdown having given way to something that looked like wonder mixed with shame. "Sarah, I need to apologize for everything. For every piece of unsolicited advice I gave you. For every time I acted like the successful little brother teaching his struggling sister about life." "Tyler, you don't need to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted. "You saved my house. You literally saved my future, and I repaid that kindness by treating you like you didn't understand basic financial planning. I've been an arrogant ass and I'm sorry." Rebecca, who'd been quietly observing the family dynamics all evening, spoke up for the first time since the revelation. "What Tyler's trying to say is that we're grateful and humbled, and a little bit in awe. The wedding we're planning, the life we're building, it's possible because you intervened when we needed help most." Marcus and Jennifer approached together, both looking subdued and thoughtful. Marcus's earlier anger had transformed into something more complex, embarrassment mixed with genuine remorse. "Sarah, I don't know how to process this," Marcus began. "For 3 years I've been feeling successful and secure, thinking I'd turned my financial situation around through smart decisions and hard work. Learning that my success was actually made possible by my little sister, it's humbling in a way I didn't expect." Jennifer nodded, her usual polished confidence replaced by genuine emotion. "I've been awful to you, Sarah. All those comments about being practical and making the best of limited resources. I was being condescending to someone who could have bought and sold our entire lifestyle without thinking about it." "You weren't awful," I said gently. "You were operating based on the information you had. I chose to withhold information that would have changed your perspective." "But why?" Marcus asked, the question that had been building throughout the evening. "Why endure years of condescension when you could have commanded respect? Why let us feel superior when you were actually supporting us?" I considered how to explain the complex motivations that had driven my decision to remain hidden. Because I'd seen what money does to families, Marcus. I'd watched wealthy clients struggle with relatives who suddenly needed investments in questionable schemes, or children who felt entitled to inherited wealth rather than motivated to create their own success. Diana, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet since her initial explosion, finally rejoined the conversation. She'd spent the last hour on her phone, clearly researching everything she could find about my company and my professional achievements. "I found the Cleveland Business Journal article about you," she said, holding up her phone. "The one where they called you Cleveland's most mysterious success story. The reporter spent 3 paragraphs describing how you've managed to build a major company while maintaining almost complete anonymity." She set down her phone and looked directly at me. "Sarah, I owe you an apology that goes beyond just tonight. I've spent 3 years positioning myself as the successful sister-in-law while treating you as the family charity case, learning that you've been subsidizing the lifestyle I've been showing off. It's mortifying." "The lifestyle you've built is real, Diana," I replied. "Kevin's business success, your beautiful home, your professional achievements. Those aren't fake just because I helped create the financial foundation that made them possible." Kevin, who'd been quiet since learning about my intervention in his business, finally spoke up. But that's exactly what I'm struggling with, Sarah. I've been proud of turning my business around, of making smart financial decisions, of building something successful. Now I find out that my turnaround was orchestrated by my sister-in-law, who I've been treating like she doesn't understand business. Kevin, what would have happened to your business without the debt restructuring? I asked. I would have lost everything, he admitted. And with the restructuring, I was able to focus on what I do best, eliminate the distractions that were bleeding money, and build a profitable operation. So the success is real, I pointed out. I provided capital and financial structure, but you provided the business acumen and hard work that made it profitable. It's a partnership, not charity. David Peterson's earlier assessment seemed to be proving accurate. My family was beginning to understand that what I'd done was sophisticated wealth management rather than manipulation or deception. Emma, my assistant, had texted during the evening's chaos, clearly worried when I didn't respond to her usual check-ins. I'd finally replied with a simple message. Family knows everything now. We'll call tomorrow. Her response was immediate. About time. How are you feeling? The answer to that question was complicated. Relieved, certainly. Exhausted from maintaining the deception for so long. Anxious about how relationships would evolve now that the truth was out. But also, surprisingly, hopeful. So what happens now? Tyler asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. Now we figure out how to be a family that includes a multimillionaire, I replied. We establish new boundaries and expectations. We decide what kind of relationship we want to have going forward. Diana looked concerned. Sarah, I hope this doesn't mean you'll stop helping us when we need it. I know that sounds selfish after everything that's happened tonight, but Diana, I didn't help you because I had to, I explained. I helped because I wanted to see you succeed. That hasn't changed. What has changed is that now you know where the help is coming from, which means we can have honest conversations about it. Mom, ever the practical one, asked the question that had probably been nagging at her all evening. Sarah, honey, what about us? Our mortgage. Did you? Your mortgage was paid off last year, I confirmed. I wanted to ensure your retirement was financially secure. You raised 4 children on teachers' salaries and gave us everything we needed to succeed. It was the least I could do. Dad's eyes filled with tears again. Sarah, we don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, I replied. You gave me the values and work ethic that made my success possible. This is just me paying forward what you invested in me. The conversation continued past midnight, with family members taking turns processing the revelation and asking questions about my business, my life, and my plans for the future. The anger and accusations that had dominated the earlier confrontation gave way to curiosity, gratitude, and the slow rebuilding of relationships on a foundation of truth rather than assumptions. Marcus asked about my employees and whether they knew about my family situation. Tyler wanted to understand the technical aspects of debt restructuring. Diana was fascinated by the marketing challenges of growing a company while maintaining personal anonymity. My parents asked about my daily life, my real home, and whether I was happy. The question about happiness was the most complex one to answer. Building my company had been professionally fulfilling and financially rewarding, but the isolation required to maintain my secret had been emotionally costly. Now, for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could share my accomplishments with the people I loved most. As the evening wound down and family members began preparing to leave, Diana pulled me aside for a private conversation. Sarah, I want you to know that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure the Meridian Financial Solutions project is the best work Livingston Marketing has ever produced. Not because you're my sister-in-law, but because you deserve it professionally. I know you will, I replied. Your work has been exceptional all along. That's why we chose Livingston Marketing in the first place. Kevin joined us, shaking his head with a mixture of amazement and embarrassment. Sarah, I offered to introduce you to your own company tonight. I'm going to be processing that humiliation for months. Kevin, you offered to help someone you thought needed networking assistance, I corrected. That's what good people do. The fact that the situation was more complex than you realized doesn't diminish the kindness of the gesture. As my family left Diana's house, my house technically, the atmosphere was completely different from when they'd arrived. The condescension and pity that had characterized their treatment of me for years had been replaced by respect, gratitude, and a healthy dose of awe. Tyler lingered for a final conversation. Sarah, I know this might sound weird, but I'm actually relieved. For 3 years, I've been worried about you, feeling guilty about my success, while you seem to be struggling, learning that you've been more successful than all of us combined. It's like a weight has been lifted. I'm sorry I let you worry, I said. That wasn't my intention. I know, he replied. And I understand why you kept it secret, but I'm glad it's out now. I'd rather have an honest relationship with my incredibly successful sister than a fake one based on misunderstandings. Driving home to my real house for the first time after a family gathering, I reflected on how dramatically everything had changed in a single evening. The careful performance I'd maintained for 3 years was over. The family dynamics that had been built on false assumptions had been shattered and would need to be rebuilt from scratch. But as I pulled into the driveway of my lakefront home and looked out at the moonlight reflecting on Lake Erie, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: the possibility of authentic relationships with the people I loved most. The secret that had protected me had also isolated me, and now that it was gone, I could finally share my real life with my family. The phone calls and texts that followed over the next few days confirmed that the revelation had fundamentally changed our family dynamic, but in ways that felt healthy and hopeful. Marcus sent photos of his house with a note. Thank you for saving our home. I promise to be a better brother to the woman who made our life possible. Diana called to discuss the Meridian project with new enthusiasm and professionalism. Tyler and Rebecca invited me to dinner at their house, the one I'd saved from foreclosure, to properly thank me and get to know the real Sarah. Most importantly, my parents called every day that week, not because they were worried about me, but because they were excited to learn about the life their daughter had built and proud to finally understand the scope of what she'd accomplished. For the first time since founding my company, I could share my success with the people who mattered most. And while the path forward would require navigating new complexities and expectations, it would be built on truth rather than performance, on authentic love rather than pitying condescension. The transformation was complete, and it was just the beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.